Welcome back to another episode of NFL News on the Boomer Bust channel. I'm your host, Terry, and today, actually not necessarily news, more of some NFL talk, but I got two topics that I wanted to discuss. All right, so first we're going to start off talking about cornerback. So let's preface this because I am a person that is involved, let's say, in the empirical studies and research. And so I know when it comes to sports, there, especially with today's sports media and all that, there's a lot of just hot takes and stuff thrown out there or whatever. But we're going to walk it through in the way that I know it, which is you make a claim, and when you make a claim, you give your evidence as to what supports that claim. And that evidence can come in a number of different ways. So my claim today is that cornerbacks, or at least I should say shutdown cornerbacks, are probably going to become the next running back. Now, to be honest with you, I fought on phrasing it that way. I don't even know if I still 100% love it. But once I walk through, you'll see kind of what I'm talking about. But the evidence that I'm going to use today is case studies. So obviously, we know that in sports media, it's typically quantitative. People just run off a bunch of stats that somebody else looked up for them, or a bunch of advanced stats that people blindly quote. But today I'm going to offer up some case studies, and then we're going to talk about, or at least you'll be able to make up for your own self what you think. So for me, when I talk about going to become the next running back or whatever the case might be, I've talked about this before in terms of the NFL, and I talk a lot about it in terms of draft. Running backs, as I've talked in previous episodes when we talk about the whole market for them, running backs are a dime a dozen, and they've been for a while. I mean, this is something that I picked up just playing Madden back in the day. I always think about it, never forget it, because I'm a big franchise guy. And it didn't take me long to realize, if most of my O-line is 90s overall, then this 78 running back actually can do about the same job, at least production wise, that I need than this guy that's 90 something. Or maybe I have two backs, one that's fast and one that's stronger. And not to say that I came up with that, but you think back to Reggie Bush and Lindell White, Thunder and Lightning. We've seen all types of combinations. But either way, the idea that, hey, if the offensive line is opening up holes, the running back, not say it don't matter, but that's more important than having just a stud running back. And so then you get to the point where you start seeing a lot of production out of running backs from later rounds. And that really is the thing. The conversation about the passing league and the run game not being valued is so misguided. The NFL runs. They run pretty much on pace with what they've been running, but they don't have this infatuation with the lead back. So that caused this running back market to shift. Really what caused it to shift at the end of the day, besides the injuries, is that some of the analytical people will tell you that position is not, in terms of your cap space, that's not really conducive to winning. And there's cases to be made, but again, this really isn't about them. And I believe that there's a case to be made that the same thing is going to happen to cornerbacks pretty soon. Now, I want you to understand, I think the next running back in terms of exact situation are receivers, followed closely by tight ends and off-ball linebackers. But receivers, I really think, are the next up. The only reason I say that corners are different because this isn't a situation of supply and demand. When you're talking about a running back and even a receiver, the production along the lines of the draft are very wide, especially really all of them, but especially running back. But when you're talking about a corner, that's not really the case. The production lines falls heavy to the earlier rounds, especially when you're talking about elite corners, which obviously there's not a ton of them, but the ones that there are fall heavy towards the first round. So this isn't a supply and demand type situation. The reason that I think the cornerbacks are going this way are because of their impact on winning. The same thing that we talked about with the running backs. And so the case studies that I have, I mean, number one, we're going to talk about the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, not only by certain statistics, because people just throw out number one defense or whatever, and they're talking about a specific stat, but they don't always say what it is. I like to look at personally first downs and that efficiency, total number of first downs, that type of stuff. That's what matters to me. Usually that correlates to yards and everything else. So if you look at those stats, Denver was most assuredly a top 3 defense against the pass, and overall a top 3 defense in general. And so you're talking about one of the best defenses last year for a lot of different reasons. Keep in mind, Bradley Chubb did not finish the year with this team. And so while you might want to point to other things, and there's definitely other things to point to, Bradley Chubb isn't one that I really would give you because A, he's not doing much in Miami, but B, he left the team and they still continue to do what they did. And again, there's questions of schedule too, but just, for general purposes, this was a top 3 defense. And many people would lead or look at, their young stud of a cornerback, Patrick Surtain II, PS2, as one of the top reasons for that. And I think he is absolutely a top 5 corner and a bona fide shutdown corner. And so, and again, this isn't, honestly, to tell you, none of these case studies made me think this, but these are evidence to what I've already thought. So then you look at the Denver Broncos this year, and you see they are one of the worst defenses. Oh, no, sorry. They are the worst defense. Dolphins, well, no, Dolphins not the worst, but they up there. Cardinals are really giving up a lot, but I think overall they're the worst defense. And so you look at Patrick Surtain being a part of that team, and without even looking at him individually with how he's doing, I'm not claiming to know how he's doing, you can just still say this team, which largely was the same, to be honest, but this team still, either way, you have a unit that severely declined, if not completely switched their space in what they were. And Patrick Surtain, and again, I'm not watching him, but I believe this is 3rd or 4th year. I believe it's 3rd or 4th year. I don't expect that he's all of a sudden a different corner. Could he have a down year? Sure, but I don't think he's a different corner. And I haven't watched him, so you might be like, well, this point's invalid because he's not playing great. I don't know. But I will say, I believe Surtain still is PS2. It's not a fluke. And that team that unit is completely changed. And there's a lot of discussion to talk about. I'm not really here to talk about why they changed, but the fact is having that shutdown corner didn't prevent them from becoming a totally bad defense. Even if you wanted to say one of the safeties in the other corner on the other side had a miscommunication, or one of the safeties in the nickel have a miscommunication, and none of this is Surtain, that's still going to result in points and yards. Him being there doesn't change the schematics of that team and what they're doing to stop a defense. If they have a coverage bust, they have a coverage bust. It doesn't matter that Surtain's out there. And then if the pass rush is lacking, the pass rush is lacking. Even if he was able to cover his man the entire 8 seconds. 8 seconds, somebody's gonna get open. And so having this shutdown corner doesn't change anything. And even when they had the top flight defense, obviously didn't correlate to wins. Not saying defense doesn't equal wins, but still. So there's that. Then you look at this past weekend, yesterday, you had the New York Jets beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles have been going through their own bumps throughout the season, even though they were undefeated. I think most people that know football will watch and say they haven't been the same. Jalen Hurts particularly hasn't been the same. But even with that being said, Sauce Gardner was out, and I think somebody said the other corner was out. I'm not sure if that's true, but I know for a fact Sauce Gardner was out. Sauce won Defense Player of the Year. He was All-Pro. Now, do I think Sauce is better than PS2? No, I don't. Do I think he has the intangibles to be an elite corner? Absolutely. And I do think you would probably consider him a shutdown. So, fresh out of college, had all this ability and cashed in on it. Might be a little too cocky for his own good, my personal opinion. But either way, most people are going to consider him a top corner, a shutdown corner. And again, this is one game, but this is the case study. The Eagles go into that game, and while A.J. Brown was able to do his thing, and regardless of the past game, the defense did not allow them to get to 20 points. And so you have Q Williams or Quinn, because they're both of them names Q Williams. But you got big Q Williams on the line and that whole defensive line. Obviously, the secondary, the guys that are playing are pretty good and well coached. Linebackers good too. But the point is, Sauce wasn't there and it didn't completely wreck the game. Now, the Eagles losing are probably a surprise to a lot of people, me included. But one thing I did think with Sauce out, even though it's a good defense, I thought the passing game for the Eagles would be able to do what they got to do. And, a lot of that's on the quarterback. Again, it's a one-game sample size. But I would still submit this as a case study. Look at this game without Sauce Gardner, a probably top 5 corner, and what the defense was able to do and what the team was able to do. They still won without him. So then next, I would point to Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, and because we all say it's a copycat league, and we all say that, well, not everybody, but at least me, whoever wins the Super Bowl, that's the thing. That's how you got to win. Which is, why we always hear these conversations as if there's only one way to win. But of course, we've seen a lot of different people win. But the Rams win the Super Bowl. Obviously, Stafford's the first discussion, going to get a veteran quarterback. But that defense obviously was a top tier unit. Either way, there's two things. Number one, after that win, you didn't see a lot of people go flying for corners. Obviously, you're going to take them in the draft as you usually do if they're best available. But nobody broke the bank for a corner. The Rams went out and gave a lot for Jalen Ramsey. And you didn't see a lot of teams emulate that. And then what happens the next year? The Rams defense falls off. Now, again, there's context to that. Obviously, the offense not being what it was, Stafford being hurt, that contributes a lot to the numbers defensive-wise. But just playing-wise, you watch that team, they were not the same defense. And also, you could talk about the coach leaving. You can talk about a lot of things, but the players are there. Jalen Ramsey's still there. And to be honest with you, Jalen Ramsey was playing pretty good. I would say even great. Now, some people might look at the numbers and say different things, but here's the thing. They moved him to a star position, similar, basically a nickel, similar to what he did in college, and then stick with it all year. But starting out the gate, he was making huge plays, and guess what? They were still losing. They were still losing and they were still giving up a lot of yards. So Jalen Ramsey, who was elite corner during the Super Bowl win, still an elite corner the next year, and playing well, didn't change what the Rams were. Then, obviously, the Rams get rid of him. He goes to the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, Ramsey hasn't played. The Dolphins have been really bad. And so as I was saying earlier, one of the worst defense, especially, well, in general. So some people might be like, well, yeah, that just proves the point against what you're saying. They don't have Ramsey. They're not good in the pass, except they're not good in the run either. They're not doing well as a defense, period. And so this, though, is a good opportunity because I'm objective with it. It's not really me trying to be right about anything or have an agenda. This is an opportunity for us to now further see more evidence of how this case study plays out. It's a perfect one. The defense has been really bad. With Jalen Ramsey coming back, could they turn this defense around? Now, I'm not saying it will be no change. I do think there's room for them to get better. But if my claim holds up, if this is really true, I don't see the Dolphins, not even statistically, if you want to just compare like when he came back to versus when he wasn't there, I think statistically you're not going to see a huge difference. And by huge, I mean they're not going to move 10 spots. So if let's just say they're 27, I don't see them jumping up to 17th because Ramsey's there. Does an elite corner give you 17 spots in whatever defensive category you want to look at besides running? I don't think so, personally. But we'll get to see. But I think from what we've seen so far, and I'm not saying elite corners are bad. I'm not saying they're not good to have. But I think they're going to be headed towards the next running back. That's my thought. Let me know what you think of that. So, last topic in the second part is about Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, Colorado. Now, a lot of caveats, as I had the last time, but a lot of caveats with this. Understand, I don't watch college football. I only watch it when it's time for the draft. So I have no dog in the fight. I have no reason to really get into any silly college argument bias. I do have a coaching bias. Let's put that at the front. And that fuels a lot of my perspective because we're talking about Deion and coaching, and we'll get to all that. But that definitely changes my perspective a lot. So we'll put that bias out there. And I'll continue to lay it out as I go. So once we had the whole thing with Deion Sanders, the Colorado. So for me, there's two main reasons that I did, really one, but two reasons why I didn't talk about this till now, because I don't want people to say, oh, you're just piling on while they're kicking them, while they're down, whatever. Number one reason I didn't talk about it is because I don't care about college football. I'm not into college football like that. And I'm not sitting here claiming to be an expert in anything. So just understand as I talk about this is from a bigger picture standpoint, more of a coaching standpoint. And this isn't, a referendum on college football as me as an expert. Not saying that. That's number one reason I talk about it. The second reason is, to a lesser extent, it has become taboo to talk about anything negative with Prime. So let's start there. I like Prime. Obviously, great player. Enjoyed him on TV. I even like that I love that he wanted to coach and get into coaching. He's been doing it at the high school level for a long time, without a lot of fanfare. But then obviously he took the step to Jackson State. So with this, there's a couple things there's right off the top that people gotta understand that I at least know that I understand. I understand the conversation about black head coaches in the Power Five and in coaching in general, to be quite honest, in college and NFL level. I understand the discussion about black joy, about black people being able to express themselves, and how criticism against how players express themselves and how they act could be looked at as, a form of, not, I wouldn't say a form, but it has connotations of white supremacy and respectability politics. I get all that. And so, even with all that being said, I've never been on this hype train with Deion Sanders. The thing that I've found most annoying is that you've had so many people in the media blatantly just completely cap for him, be biased towards him, whatever your personal language is. They're giving him way more than they would give anybody else. And so this again, as I said, the whole aspect of him being a black coach and going against the ranks, which is really the third point that I do not agree with. Because he's doing that, there becomes this sense of, oh well, if there's any criticism against him, is rooted in racism and all that, or you don't understand the bigger picture. Now the issue with that is that there's other black head coaches, and y'all didn't do nearly as much for him as y'all doing here. And so the natural rebuttal is, it's Prime. Okay, what does that mean? There's other former players that coach, even if they're not at the level of Prime. Like, what does that mean for him as a coach? So because he's Prime, that you need to go on location before his games. Because he's Prime, you need to be biased in your analysis of him. Because he's Prime, he gets the benefit of the doubt with anything he says. I don't understand what him being Prime has to do with anything. Now, if you want to say that's my friend, and some people do, then fine. Okay, at least you laying your bias out there. That's just like I'm laying my bias out here. That'd be one thing. But for the most part, there's been a treatment from the beginning that I don't understand. And yes, him telling the kids they need to go to transfer portal, and he bringing Louis and all that. People going to say there's coaches that said worse, there's coaches that's harsher. Absolutely. No one. Now, this is where you get into this, where we lose our adulthood and go back to kids. Like, just because somebody else jump off a bridge doesn't mean you need to. Like, just because other people do the wrong thing don't make it right. And I'm not saying he was wrong in that. The thing I would say the difference is those coaches not bringing a camera crew in to record it. So for me, Deion being a great player is not a question. Deion becoming a coach in the way he has is a question to me. And I think it's starting to play out. Now, this, again, you could read it as a bias, but this isn't me like you shouldn't be able to do it that way. I'm jealous. No. More so for me is, number one, if he was doing it the right way, or I should say, if he was the coach doing the things the right way in terms of how he coaches, I wouldn't have a problem how he got. I wouldn't have a big problem with how he got there. The reason mostly that I had that problem, other than you skipping over a lot of people that don't get that opportunity, is that you have to go through some things to get to that level. Now, I'm not saying like everyone goes to the extreme. Oh, you got to be a coach for 30 years and you got to go run, get coffee. No, it's not all that. You do have to, I don't think that you have to pay some dues in terms of like the grunt work, but you do have to rise up the ranks because you learn as you go up each one. The thing that everybody's trying to say, and you got big platforms like Pat McAfee and others, they're going to say we're players, we know the game. I met great players, college and NFL, that don't know the game, that don't even know their part of the game in the position they play, let alone the entire game. Why does Peyton Manning not coach? Or even, I forgot who else. I almost feel like it was Deion, but maybe it wasn't Deion. It was somebody, but Peyton said this as well. Like, they talk about not coaching because they are able to do certain things. And when the player is not able to do it the way they did, or when they can't explain how they did it, it's going to frustrate them because coaching is teaching. And so, yes, like I said, I have a bias because I know it. It's not easy. You don't just walk in and coach because you played. There's plenty of players that do not know football, and even if they do, they don't know how to teach it. And then from teaching it as a position coach, learning how to coordinate a game as a coordinator, obviously. And then from there, as a head coach, that's a completely different job. You got to manage people. Now, some people say with his personality, he can manage people. He doesn't need to. But that's not how the media, anybody plays it. No one plays it as, oh, he's just a great, manager of personalities and everything. No. What they always say, he played the game at a high level. He knows what he's doing. He played the game. He was one of the best corners. He's going to be able to teach corners how to play. That's what they say. And even if it's true you got a great personality, that doesn't make you a great coach. So I'm not really saying he's a bad coach, but I won't bury the lead. I don't think he's as good as people say. But I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but I would say rising up the ranks is important because along those ways you learn. Now, there's going to be lucky breaks. There's going to be nepotism. There's going to be all that. But rising up those ranks in general is how you learn what you need to learn to get to where you got to go. And I think that is important to the integrity of the coaching profession. So there's that. But really, it's the biased coverage. It's I don't understand. And again, let me back up. So when I say the right way, I don't think the right way is all this flash. I don't think in terms of let me do the radio, not even well, kind of, but let me do the TV hits. Let me go on TV. Let me bring my players on TV, which are my kids as well. Let me have all these celebrities. Let me make this thing a party. You just put a target on the kids' back that they clearly weren't ready for. And even if they were, even if you had a powerhouse, you don't need to bring that extra heat on people. You don't need to bring that extra distraction. So it's the cool thing. It's the cool thing to talk down about coach speak. It's the cool thing to talk about the Belichicks, the Sabins. It's the cool thing to call it old school, lame, almost borderline white, whatever. But a lot of that quote unquote cliche, people talk about it like it's a dirty word. There's a reason that it's that way because a lot of that stuff works. So when a when a coach says the job is to limit distractions, that's legit. You don't want to add distractions to the team. There's ways to have fun. There's ways to cut up. But there's ways to stand in front as a united front. There's ways to have solidarity facing the public. I mean, we know it as people in the workplace. We know it as human beings. If you're an adult, you've seen it throughout life. It's human nature. It's human psychology. You could say it's lame. You could say it's conservative. You could say we should be out here wilding, doing whatever we want to do, talking trash every chance we get. No, there's ways to do it, and there's time and places to do it. No one's saying you can't have fun. No one's saying you can't celebrate, but there's time and place to do it. Now, to also lay it on the line, I'm a hard coach. Like, if it was me, I would go crazy if I had players celebrating when we're losing. Like you be seeing people in the NFL fourth quarter catching the first down by 30, celebrating, doing the first down mark and all that. Like, what are you doing? That only tells me that you're just here for you. Now, in the NFL, it's a straight business. The NCAA is getting there, but it's a straight business. These are millionaires, fine, whatever. But as you're trying to build discipline into young men and somebody that has to do that and has been there, a lot of that detail matters. And again, I might be tougher than most coaches, but a lot of that detail matters. So when I hear Prime come out, because there's different aspects to it. There is the perception you're given, which I think is whatever. People could research as much as they want to really look into it. But I do think the perception of what Prime is giving off is bad because the media feels it. Talking about this is the culture. This is basically the black team, which is wildly inappropriate and wild, but whatever. But then there's the media side, which I ripped into them a lot. They cape for him hard. But then there's the actual coaching side. I think Deion sitting up there talking about too many penalties. We got to stop. And they keep doing it every week. And excusing some things that the players do, not condemning some of the things the players do, but it still happens. Like, bro, that's on you. That's the coaching. Like, you and somehow the narrative is being shifted to the players. That's what the media is doing because they can't criticize Deion. So instead of saying Deion shouldn't put this big spotlight on them, they're saying the players don't know how to respond to the spotlight, which I think is wild to deflect off of Deion onto the kids. That's literally your job as the coach, the head coach. You need to take that deflection off of them, especially in NCAA. And so there's that. But I listen to Deion talk, and I'm like, I don't know that he really knows how to coach for real. I mean, like I said, I don't think he's a bad coach, but here's the thing. You look at the way they criticize everybody, and it's not just the media thing, but it's the reality. You look at the way they criticize everybody. Let's just say the Jets. Or not Jets, let's say the Chargers. They play tonight. Oh, the Chargers defense is horrible, and it is. Well, Brandon Staley, you're a defensive coordinator. You obviously don't know how to coach defense. I think it's silly. But you're going to give him that blame because that's his quote-unquote background. And then the same thing, even worse with offensive coaches, quote-unquote offensive-minded. And then the coordinators, terrible play calling, all these different things. And then you got people who love Dallas. They talk about so much killing Mike McCarthy. You don't call offense. You don't call defense last year and the previous years. What do? What's your point? Deion's not a coordinator. Deion does not coordinate the defense. He don't coordinate the offense. He don't do those game plan. And to be honest, I'm not in the room, but this is from what he says and what we see. And it's so built in for all these scapegoats. I have not seen a head coach that does not coordinate either side get as much pass as Deion. Maybe Mike Tomlin, but that's the organization. But in terms of the media and everything, it's the perfect setup. They're going to blame the coaches before the coordinators for anything. Then they're going to blame the coaches. Then they're going to blame the kids. Now, the problem is they talked about how great the coaching staff is and how great all the kids, all the students that they brought in are. But now that things didn't go well, they got to blame somebody. It can't be Deion. And so I listen to him talk, and I get it. It's a frustration. You watch the games and you see, yeah, the critique is valid, but that's the stuff that you have to fix. And even if you're not a coordinator, if it's like he come out every week, special teams not working right, you as the head coach have to coach the coaches. You have to get your staff to a level where they can bring out what you want on the field. And if maybe this isn't the group and he's going to make some switches at the end of the year, but as of right now, that's on you as a coach. Somehow we turn Deion's job into what the media describes. The media often describes their own narratives that are nothing close to what happens in the building. But somehow it's starting to feel like, and again, I'm not there, but it kind of feels like Deion's running his team like the media describes, where you get to just do your thing and then we're going to put the blame on somebody else. That's not how that works. That's not how that works in the building. It's a collective effort. And even though the media doesn't always recognize who's wrong and who's right accurately, in the building, you always know. And so I'm not saying everything he does is bad. I'm not saying all that. I just think the way it's been approached has been way too much. And you put a target on your back just by being black, by walking out the door. But you put a target on your back by getting the job the way you did. Coaches are not going to respect that. Again, I don't hate it as much as other people. I just really feel like you need that training. But you put a target on that, and then you put a target on the team by just all the talk. Do you believe now? Do you believe now? It was one game. Just as a head coach, that's just not what you do. And so again, before people try to come with criticism, oh, he's a black man doing it his way with style, so you hate it. Obviously, we had the other coach, who I believe is half black at least, talk about him wearing a hat and sunglasses. Like, I'm not doing all of that. But there are certain things that as a head coach and a coach that for football wise, we ain't talking about respectability politics, but for football wise, it's just smart to do. And I feel like Deion doesn't fully have a grasp of that. And it's one thing to do it, let's just call it what it is. It's one thing to do it as an HBCU on that level. The competition you're going against is not the same. We've already seen here, because people, again, they talk about like Deion some magic elixir. Is he charismatic? Yes. Can he motivate them? Probably. Can he recruit amazingly? More than likely. Again, I don't watch college football, no. But when it comes to the X's and O's, what is he bringing? When it comes to the corners, did he just turn? You had one of the top prospects in the league, in the whole thing. And then you got other talented corners. Did he just make them world beaters? No. Football is still the game. So he's not offering you X's and O's. He's not offering you as a position coach. He's not like, so Deion is managing the overall team. That's cool. That's part of being a head coach. But so far, I'm not seeing things that are conducive to the team winning. And it's been playing out on the field. I mean, and then it doesn't help with all the chatter. Because you had, was it Colorado State? They're going to put 80 up on them all week long. Now, this ain't Deion, but they made it personal. And we branding every single thing we say, we branding it. And we got commercials and all this. They made it personal. So now everybody else is doing the hype for you. They all your hype man on ESPN and Fox. Oh, they about to put 80 up on them. They about to put 80 up on them. And they barely won in overtime. And they were like, well, look how great of a win. Like, credit to him for, like, man, miss me with that. So they move the goalposts all the time to compliment Deion. They make excuses. And the team, they just lost. Game they shouldn't lost. Oregon showed you what real talent looks like. Like, all these games have showed you probably what this team really was the whole time, but no one's giving it the true credit that it is. So just breaking it all down, like, yes, there's a lot of aspects and reason that it's become polarizing, but the truth needs to be the truth. And it's not just the media, it's fans too, because I know people here in Illinois that cape for Deion, that cape for Colorado. Ain't never even been to Colorado. Ain't never watched a Colorado Buffs game. And I get it, flashy, celebrity, all that, but I don't think that makes them the quote unquote black team. And even if they were the quote unquote black team, I don't think that means that everything they do is right. So I think people need to call it fair, call it down the middle. Bad coaching jobs, like from what I don't watch them live, but I watch the recaps, and I see the non-adjustments. I see the poor management of the clock. It's things that just because you Deion don't make you a great head coach. And I see coaches get killed every single week for some of the stuff he does, and they just cape for him. So, like I said, up to this point, I wasn't going to address it, but like, man, it's clear as day. It's clear as day, and we've seen enough sample size because I want him to win. I mean, the idea of what he's trying to do, which is work the system, be an underdog, kinda. I mean, I don't even know if he's an underdog because if you put him at you put him at Miami. I was gonna say USC, Alabama, Georgia. You don't even need to do that. Put him at Miami, somewhere with some name. Put him Notre Dame. Man, he's going to do what that school does. He's going to amplify it, but I wouldn't call him an underdog. He just went to an underdog team because nobody else would give him a chance. But I do think it probably made sense for him to, have more time on task before making the leap. And even if you did make the leap early, you don't need to put that target on your back and the team's back. But because Prime accomplished so much as a player, a lot of people acting like that just means he gets a pass as a coach. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. So anyway, that's it for me. Go down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share it around. Get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.